Alright folks, this video we're going to talk a little bit about XMP, and hopefully this will help troubleshoot some of you that can't get your XMP to pop up inside the BIOS. Now, being highly familiar with your motherboard, in this case we're really talking mainly 10th gen in this video, you could group the H410, H470, B460 together, but in another class your Z490. Now, what are the differences? Well, let's look at a couple of CPUs here. So these guys, when grouped with the Z490, can run overclocked RAM up to 4600, 4800 megahertz, somewhere in that range. You take these guys over here, and it is another story. i5 and below, the max RAM speed is 2666. i7 and above, the max RAM speed is 2933 megahertz. Okay, so why does that matter, folks? Let's take this stick of Patriot Viper RAM. It says it'll run at 3000 megahertz, right? But what is the base clock speed of this? The base clock speed of this RAM is 2133 megahertz. This is a 4 gig stick. We'll talk about the 8 gig in a second, but this is the 4 gig. Base clock speed 2133. So in either of these motherboards, this RAM could actually be overclocked, and you should actually see the XMP pop up. Alright, so over on this side we have some limits to how fast this RAM's going to run. For the i5, the fastest it's going to run is 2666. For the i9s that I'm showing, it's going to run at 2933. Now, of course, if we had i7 in here, it would be the same, right? So i7, i9, the max RAM speed we're going to get is 2933. i5 and below, 2666. Now, if I run this over, I move these guys over to the Z490, it's another story. These will run at least at the stated 3000 megahertz, and actually, you know, 3333 is a pretty good number. May be able to run it higher than that. Alright, so let's switch out the 4 gig with an 8 gig stick. So we've got a 8 gig stick in here. Base clock speed of this guy is 2666. So really, that is the max that this is going to see. Okay, these guys, you can use XMP to get this to 2933. Now, if we moved them over to here, we would be able to hit 3000, probably even 33 megahertz. Now, I bring up this MSI motherboard again. H410i Pro Wi-Fi. You see the i9 10900F is in here. And here's something that usually will not allow you to see XMP. What do we have here, folks? We have two different types of RAM. 8 gig and 4 gig, okay? So, one of these you can overclock just by hitting the XMP button. So if I had that 4 gig Patriot in here by itself, XMP lights up. Okay, now this is actually fixed RAM at 2666. That is the base speed. Putting it in by itself, you will not see the XMP. Okay, however, putting these in together in this motherboard, and not all motherboards, you actually see XMP. Okay, and what are we running at? We're actually running at 2933. You know, this is one of those cases where whether it's stable or not, it's another story, but I do have that actually working. Okay, so a lot of times that will not work. So let's go over to my favorite computer. This is the let's talk about what's in here. This is the Aris Elite AC Z490 motherboard. You saw the box. We've got the i9 10850K in here. We've got this massive Noctua CPU cooler. What do we have here, folks? We have mix match RAM, okay? And this is, you know, I would say a bit of an experiment, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Now let's look at our BIOS. There's our BIOS. You see two different types of RAM in here. And the base clock speed of all of these RAM is 2667. But what is our RAM actually running at, folks? 3331, okay? How did I get that to work? Well, there's no XMP button in here. At least at the moment there isn't. Now I'll tell you how I got it to work. Well, if you were to take, say, the Patriot RAM and remove those, reboot this, you would end up showing XMP in here, okay? Now from that point, setting the speed, shutting it down, putting the Patriot RAM back in, restarting. After a restart, magically it shows 3333. So not all motherboards is that going to work, all right? But you can see there's no XMP, and that's part of the reason there is no XMP. So let's talk about some reasons why you might not see XMP. Well, mix matching styles of RAM, okay, such as these guys, having a fixed RAM with a overclockable RAM may result in XMP not showing up. Some motherboards it may actually show up. Mix matching overclockable RAM may result in not having XMP show up, such as what we have there. Of course, the light's not helping. All right, so what do we have here, folks? We have a fixed RAM, right? Base clock speed is 2666. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to get the BIOS to boot up. That's why you hear me clicking away in the background. But what do we expect to see with this RAM that is set to 2666? So here's our 2666. You see XMP is grayed out, okay? This is, you know, what you would expect when you match this up with overclockable RAM, that it would do this, but in the other case it actually worked. So that's why you're not going to see XMP light up in here, regardless of the fact that I have an i9, right? We have an i9 10900F in there, and the max speed that it can handle is 2933. We cannot overclock that RAM using XMP. Alright, so we have now removed the single stick that was fixed with a single stick of the 3000 that is overclockable. And once again, going into the BIOS, we will see what that looks like when you have only one stick. Does dual channel RAM matter for XMP? So no, it does not. You do not have to have two of these to actually get XMP to show up. And there you see the profile. Right now it is set at 2133. We will eventually go ahead and you know, pump that up to 3000. But for the next example, what we're going to do is put two sets of 3000 megahertz RAM in here. One's a 4 gig stick and the other is an 8 gig stick, and we're going to see what happens. Alright, so now we have a stick of 8 gig and a stick of 4 gig in here. Alright, so with this motherboard, and you know, early in the video we talked about motherboards and potentially why they may be the problem for your XMP not working. This case, you see we have two sets of RAM in here. These both have different clock speeds, okay? So MSI, guess what? XMP works. I actually ran this over in this motherboard and it did not work. It did not actually allow me to have two separate styles of RAM in it. I say separate RAM, styles of RAM. What I meant is to have two different base speeds, okay? So one, the 4 gig one is 2133 megahertz and the 8 gig is 2666 megahertz. However, in this example, it actually shows you what the lowest base speed is. However, what we're actually running at in a second is going to be 2133. So let's go over to advanced, and then we're going to, actually we're in advanced, sorry. Go over to overclock inside of advanced, and then we're going to click the enabled. Now we are potentially running at 2933. So let's see what it actually runs at inside of Windows. See if it fails. Alright, so we have Task Manager up, 12 gigs, 2933. Alright, so the example I showed you is this actually working, okay? But take my word for it, it's not going to work in every motherboard. And it definitely, you know, good luck in some of the cheaper ones like an ASRock. So there you go, folks. That's pretty much the reasons why XMP may or may not be working for you. As you can see, motherboard dependency might come into play. The type of CPU that you have in relationship to the actual RAM that you're using, right? If your RAM won't run any faster than it is stated for, then it's not going to help you at all using XMP if it even comes up. And that's looking at your CPUs, right? So the RAM that I showed that was overclockable, its base speed was 2666, so I can't go any faster than that. So XMP, you know, is not going to do any good. Over here we had the i9s. That RAM, we were able to run it faster than 2666, right? We were able to run it at 2933 as stated for an i9. And of course, in the Z490 we can run the RAM as fast as it will allow us to run it at. And in this case, the example you used, the 3000, was able to run at 3333. Well, folks, there you go. I hope you got something out of this. I hope it helps you out. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.